Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions on media and production 7 days a week. If you're new around here, you can find out more about us by heading over to officehours.global. Again, the show is run by your questions, so you can hop into Makana, ask questions, vote on questions, chat about the questions. If you're not in Makana, head to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. 24/7, that thing's open, so you get that question anytime, day or night. Askofficehours.global. Type in your name, type in the question, and it'll find its way into the show. Let's hop into those questions. Alexander?
First question this morning is from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. I've seen warnings about fake Neumann TLM 103 and 102 mics for sale. Real?
Alexander?
Yeah, it's definitely a problem, and it's not just for Neumann, another popular brand, Shure, and all the fakes that I've seen have been coming from third-party unauthorized sellers on Amazon. They all seem to be Chinese resellers, so you got to be really careful. Your first line of defense when you're buying any new product is buy from an authorized dealer. If you are going to buy something from Amazon, make sure it says ships from and sold by Amazon directly, because that's much less likely to be fake. So I would be careful of that. When buying used products, that's always a lot more difficult as well. Generally, when you're buying used mics, you might want to check with your local authorized sellers as well, because oftentimes, they take in trades, that sort of stuff. So you can get great deals on used mics, and often with some kind of warranty, which is really nice. So do be careful of that.
Alex?
Exactly what Alex said. I think that you have to be worried about with many, many products at this point. And I think you shouldn't assume that you're buying something from Amazon and it's going to be the real deal. Definitely look for, I used to think, I could just buy something from Amazon, but I've gotten stuff that not okay. So it's no longer, I think it's actually gotten better. Amazon's cracking down on some of this, but they haven't figured it all out. But buying something, making sure it's shipping from Amazon, making sure that it comes from an authorized dealer, as Alex said. Places that I tend to order hardware right now is Sweetwater for a lot of the audio stuff. B&H is still something that I order a lot from, and then Amazon. I have to admit, I do order most of the stuff from Amazon if I can find it because of the return policy. So it's so easy to take things back, even though I still forget sometimes. It's still easier to get it back to them. So I go to the Whole Foods anyway, and so being able to drop it off there is pretty luxurious. But I do, after a couple bad, especially the Stream Deck incident. Most of us had this. There was a Stream Deck that they said, I don't know, it was $99. It should have been $199, or I don't remember what it was, but all of us jumped in. And I have to admit, I just did it to see what would happen. And sure enough, it never shipped from China. Like it was like this great deal, and it didn't ship. And they'd figured out some angle where Amazon would never get into a place where it could go after it. I don't know what happened, but it was worth talking about on Mac Break as an experiment for me, but it was but you do have to be careful. If you see something that's shipping from something other than Amazon, think about it. That's all.
Alexander?
Yeah, and oftentimes, if the price is too good to be true, it usually is.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. For some reason, people have latched onto the Shure SM58 on Amazon. There's a lot of fake SM58s at far below what the retail price or the asking price is. So, if you see an SM58 for $50, you should really be careful about that, because it's probably not real.
Next question.
Next question is from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I have a Lumens PTZ camera that automatically zooms all the way in after I go to a preset position. I have both a Lumens controller and a software controller, so would one of them possibly be causing the issue? Nothing obvious is sticking out to me.
Alex?
We need to know how you're talking to the controller. So is that an IP connection, a VISCA connection? That would be the first thing. It sounds like it's either getting a bad command or it's getting no command and it's automatically doing something. And so what you want to look at is let us know how it's talking. How is the controller talking to the PTZ camera? And if you have multiple PTZ cameras, do they all do it, or does only that one camera do it? And that would help us kind of dig into that a little deeper.
Next question.
Next question is from Paul Wahus in Austin, Texas. ElevenLabs launched a free iOS app called ElevenLabs Reader AI Audio. The app can convert any text into audio from one of 11 types of voices. How could you integrate this into your workflow?
I mean, I don't know. There's no Adam and there's no Bill. So I'm totally lost. Alex?
Yeah, there is there's been a thing called Dream Reader, which I've used for, I don't know, a decade. And the voices, haven't been as good as the ones that are coming out of ElevenLabs. But what it allowed me to do is take a PDF and just listen to it. And I've listened to hundreds of pages of PDFs that I don't want to watch. I'm reading. I had a job for a while that it was like an hour and a half each way, and so I would just sit there and listen to PDFs of things that I needed to gather up for work or just my interests. And so I think that being able to do that, one of the things when I saw this question, one of the things I thought about is the ability to use AI to get rid of the thing that kills you when you put a PDF in, especially if it's a scientific journal. It's all the bibliography. So it's like you'll get to the end of every chapter, and then you have to listen for like 4 minutes while you're driving of all the references. And I realized you could throw that into an AI program and say, get rid of all the bibliography, get rid of all the references, get rid of all of these things, and just give me the text. And it probably would just do that pretty automatically and then play it back for you. I do think that it's going to be interesting in an AI world of how you deal with advertising, because a lot of advertising resists putting things into audio because there's nowhere to put ads because people don't want to listen to the ads, and so there's an issue. But I got to tell you, like nowadays with news, there's things that I just want to read, and I want to be able to have the option to read it. There's lots of things I skip over because it's a video or audio, but there's a lot of things when I'm walking, I want to just listen to something, or while I'm driving, I just want to listen to some articles. Although I will admit that a lot of that has been replaced. I mean, literally in the last week, 80% of my listening, and maybe this will go down, but 80% of my listening has been connected to the new ChatGPT 4.0. Yesterday, I took a stroll through the woods and had a discussion about 8 PSK versus QPSK versus 16 and 32 PSK transmission of satellite uplinks with ChatGPT. It was pretty good. It was, what about this and how does this work and what are the phase angles of and you sit there and just start asking questions, and so it's going to be really interesting how all of these things kind of piece together.
David? Just curious, could you use it in a workflow to build your own, like Alex was saying, build your own bespoke ebooks or not ebooks, audiobooks to listen to? Could you chapterize it in that way? And the biggest question I have is, does it have that annoying TikTok? This is that one voice that I really despise in TikTok.
Adam is not there.
Adam's not there. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I got to tell you, the ChatGPT one that I'm using is amazing. I'm just kind of amazed that it just sounds like a person. It's quite a thing.
Oliver?
Yeah, so I don't know about that app, but the Mac OS, and I was just looking to see if the iOS also has that, has speech synthesis, and they have that for a long time, and we just added it to Photomagico as a way to provide in-app tutorials that are voiced by someone who speaks English better, and we don't have to store all the audio files, and so it sounds a little funky, but they have a couple of alternative voices that you can use, and I don't know if ElevenLabs uses actually their own technology here, or if they just use something that's in macOS or iOS. But there are uses if you can access this as a developer. There's a lot of uses for that.
Alex?
And of course, ElevenLabs has hundreds of voices if you actually pay for it. So this is the free version that is available there, but there's hundreds of voices that are available, and you can train your own voices. You can upload your own samples in ElevenLabs and build your own from those as well. So they are probably the most one of the most advanced. I wouldn't say the most advanced, but one of the most advanced commercial solutions for audio synthesis right now. So they've already been doing this pretty heavily for a long time. I think that this one is specifically something that is easy and cheap for people to put on their iPhone and be able to listen to things I think it's a good way for them to introduce themselves to a wider market.
And Oliver?
Yeah, so that sounds like they do their own thing. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah. So I think that if you're looking for something commercial, they have all kinds of solutions. And Bill, there's one called Bill that sounds amazingly like Bill. And he said, hey, I didn't do anything with this. So I'm wondering if somebody uploaded it and made Bill. Because if you listen to Bill on ElevenLabs, it sounds a lot like our Bill.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida asks, I have been testing the same prompts in ChapGPT, DALL-E, and Midjourney. DALL-E results seem cartoonish by comparison, or is it just me?
Alex? It's not just you. Midjourney's a lot further along. So here's the advantage that you get with DALL-E is DALL-E you can converse with it. So you can say, I want to have this thing. And then it will, you say, well, I'll take this away or move this over or move this thing that you can then, as soon as it creates that image, you can ask it to do things like move the front person over part way or whatever you want, or make it red, and it's really hard to do that with Midjourney. So you have more explicit control in DALL-E than you do in Midjourney, but the realism isn't as good. Now, one of the interesting things is you can do something in DALL-E. When you ask it something, it actually builds something. It builds a description that's more detailed than what you put in as a prompt. You can take that prompt and put it into Midjourney and get something from it as well. So you can actually take the prompt from DALL-E, tweak it a little bit with some of the Midjourney prompts, and get something that's much more realistic in Midjourney that oftentimes looks a lot like the DALL-E one with more detail. So there's a lot of options there. But you're absolutely right. If you're looking for photorealism, you're going to get much closer with Midjourney than you are with DALL-E.
And there were a lot of people who were gravitating towards DALL-E for no other reason than the fact they could interact with it on the web. But Midjourney's opened up their alpha for web creation to anyone who's created even just 100 images.
It's really impressive.
It's really, really nice.
It's a really nice interface. I have to admit, I still do most of my stuff in Midjourney because I'm so used to how the prompts work in Midjourney. But I do like the web interface is growing very fast, and you're getting most of the controls. In fact, you have some controls in the web interface that are harder to get to, or harder to remember what the prompts are in Midjourney. Midjourney again keeps on growing like a weed in a pond.
Next question.
Zach Stylesmith in Chautauqua, New York asks, I'm working to upgrade my home server to NextCloud. I have a 10 terabyte TerraMaster network attached storage. Do I connect NextCloud to TerraMasterOS using the built-in TM configuration, or do everything in NextCloud by providing TM credentials?
Go ahead, Alex.
We didn't even get a good answer for you on a Friday. I don't think that any of our tech users here are necessarily using are using NextCloud, and I'm not actually. I'm not actually very familiar with NextCloud. I think Zach, you're introducing us to a new product here that we probably ought to find out more about. NextCloud is an open source content collaboration format. Yeah, I will admit that open source and putting my data in places is not something that goes together very, very often. So I'm not sure if I would that would concern me a lot. So I don't know anything about it. And I don't think I would probably. I will look forward, Zach, for you to tell us how this turns out, but I would probably not put my data there.
Yeah, Zach, I would definitely want to hear your take as well and what your use case is. Are you trying to, how many folks are trying to use the NAS, or is it just you on multiple workstations in multiple locations? I really, similar to build on what Alex said, when it matters and when I'm getting paid for something, I really, really get worried when I veer into the open source area or that kind of arena. But only you know your use case. So, hop on the panel, say hi. We'd love to hear about it. Next question.
All right, the next question is from me. Normally, I leave my ATEM running 24/7, but recently started turning it off when not in use. This morning, when I booted it up, the network connection didn't come on. Power cycle fixed it. Has anyone run into this before?
David?
Just curious, if you're using DHCP, it could be a lease assignment tombstoning. Sometimes the power cycle needs a solid minute to release that on a DHCP server. That's the only thing I can think of, unless it's energy saving on any of the other network devices in chain. So if it's going into a low power state, it might also drop that connection until it sees some activity.
Alex?
Yeah, Alexander, are you using, is it DHCP?
It's a good question here. I'm looking, I think it would say that in ATEM setup, right? And I think I have it.
If it is set to DHCP on your DHCP server, I would recommend putting in a reservation.
I believe I have it set to DHCP, but I think I have the IP address set as reserved on my Ubiquity so that it doesn't. I've never had that, and it didn't. It's not like it was delayed negotiating. It just sat there for a couple minutes, just zero. And I looked at the back of the ATEM, and I saw no lights coming out of that network port. I'm not sure if there are lights, but I figured I would see something. So I just power cycled again, came back on. I've never actually had that problem happen before, so it's just a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah, we were kind of talking. We were talking a little bit about just before the show about some odd issues we have here and there with ATEMs, and I think it's really amazing when you step back and think about the level of quality that you're getting for a fraction of the price that it would have been 10 or 15 years ago. But sometimes it is a power cycle that's fixing everything. The other thing is, think about your thermal management. I'm not sure if this is directly tied to your issue, but I was doing some cleaning over the weekend, and I just took one of these air dusters that's not going to blow out any liquid or look like Mr. Freeze when you turn the can upside down. And I took it to my Blackmagic 6K and to the ATEM and my Synology, and the dust that came out of that was incredible. You don't realize when we're running these for as long as we are, doing hours and hours a day in meetings, there's a lot of airflow going through that thing, so it's worth it to keep it cool. Next question.
Next question comes from Hasma Gajar in Cape Town, South Africa. Anyone use Mac Studio for Zoom meeting event? Should I? Have a pluggable on host for 2 more monitors in ATEM, one for ZoomISO to select participant, one for ZoomISO to feed host gallery view, which is programmed to confidence monitor. Pluggable needs TLC.
David?
I've never used Pluggable on the Mac Studio. Instead, I go with Peerstone makes USB-C to HDMI cables that I find pretty reliable. 3-footer at B&H will go for about $20. Granted, it gobbles up one of your USB-C ports on the back of the Studio, but if it's used in production, you probably don't need all the I/O that you might think you do.
Alex? Yeah, I have 4 monitors coming out of my Mac Studio right now, and of course I use it for ATEMs. But I don't really I put stuff on displays there, but I'm kind of dragging things around to look at them. But I think that you could use. You can definitely use up to 4. The main question is what else are you attaching to it? And what else, as David said, what else do you need those USB-Cs for? I've been just pointing them straight out. Another way to handle that, as you start to get as you start to want to put more of those in, is just get a Sonnet box, and then you could have all your ISOs coming out of via SDI, and then into if you had an ATEM SDI switcher, you could have 8 Zoom ISOs or anything else you want to do coming out of that, or 4 coming out and going into your switcher. And as there's a point where all this HDMI stuff is great, but there is a point where you may decide that you want to start moving to, as you start really doing productions, at some point you're going to move to SDI, or NDI. So you could do NDI in those processes, but if you're dealing with an ATEM, there's some point where you switch over, I'm making enough money, I'm doing enough work, that you start moving into it. And the things that you start moving into is a router. So you start getting a 20 by 20 router, although if you're going to keep growing, get a 40 by 40 because you'll grow into it. You'll grow into, routers are like bags. You'll just fill them up with outputs. So you just keep on, you'll just keep on adding things until they run out of things. But you'll get a router and you'll get an SDI switcher. I think that if you're really doing productions, again, I have a HDMI Mini Extreme here in my desk. That's what I like it. But when I do production, I'm using a Constellation. So I think about bigger hardware. If you're going to start, it's worth investing in. You're going to be able to keep on growing into that process.
David?
Yeah, and for ZoomISO for the confidence out, I think you can mix and match outputs and just throw an NDI source out, put a Apple TV with Sienna NDI monitor or Bird Dog, whatever the little box is, and do it that way. It might be cost effective.
Next question.
Next question is from Paul Wall, who is in Austin, Texas. Would the Olympus M.Zuiko Digital ED 12 to 100 millimeter f4 IS Pro lens be overkill for use with a Panasonic GH5 with a 98-inch TV wall? What would be the best spacing for camera, presenter, and screen?
Alex?
Yeah. So yes, it's overkill. Like you don't need 100 millimeters on the back of your. Most likely, it depends on what your distance is, but you need to play with it a little bit. But basically the ones that we've done in the past, I built a bunch of these both for ourselves and for other people. Typically, we have, if you think about a desk here and you have a person, that's either going to be sitting or standing, we usually want from the from the person's back to the monitor, we're trying to get to 36 inches. So about a meter, about 1 meter over. Let me make that a little smaller. And then you want to have that TV kind of down like this. A lot of times it's just slightly tilted down. That's going to make it easier with your lights. Now the distance between here and the camera usually is actually a bit more. So usually in this kind of configuration, the camera we'll usually have maybe 5 to 7 feet. So basically about 2 meters to the camera here. And that might have a teleprompter. If it gets much further than that, it's hard to manage the teleprompter is the issue. It starts to be hard to read, start thinking about things. And then, of course, you want those lights as high as you can make them. The way we think about where we put lights, here is we want them as high as we can get where we still see, when they look at the teleprompter, we want to see the highlights in the top of their eyes. If you see the highlights in the top of their eyes, as you move that light up, you're going to get a nice definition along the chin. But you're not going to, if you lose the highlights, you're going to start getting all kinds of shadows from some people's eyebrows and so on and so forth. So that doesn't work. So anyway, that's kind of the thing. And then the things that really make this work really well, and again, you're doing it for yourself, so you probably don't have to worry about this, but if you just move it a lot, having the seat motorized, the table motorized, the camera on what we call a hot pod or a PED, and the monitor on some kind of motorized riser. What that does is it gives you the 4 points that you're dealing with all the time. And for different people, what we have, the reason that we started motorizing these is we were doing these SMTs. So we were doing satellite media tours, and we do them with a lot of people. So it's not most satellite media tours, you have what a satellite media tour is, we got a little time today, is you take a person, so you don't even know you probably don't know that satellite media tours exist. Most people don't know that they're there. But if you watch your Friday, your morning show, your morning news show, somebody comes on from New York and they are going to show you the new hot items for Christmas, or they're going to talk about, or it might be someone from Google talking about search things, or it's going to be someone from, there's some expert that's going to tell you something. And it's like, wow, how does a little place in Des Moines, Iowa, get this person from New York to talk to them about gadgets? Where does that come from? Well, it comes from satellite media tours. It's a big business. And so what they do is they schedule this. They schedule what we call these SMTs, and they schedule them back to back. This is like that person who has got all those gadgets. They're in Des Moines at 8 o'clock. By 8:12, they're in Austin. By 8:18, they're in, and they do these little 6-minute hits, like just one after the other. And what we're doing on the back end when we're running these SMTs is we've got producers that are talking to everyone, getting them all ready to go, getting it all signed up. A lot of times why it's called a satellite media tour is because everybody's on the satellite. So you're just pushing this raw feed up to the thing, and every station, they don't get to be on the satellite media tour if they don't, if they start taking someone else's take, but they get to see it. It's just live to them. And then the IFB changes. So we're sitting there, and usually it's a phone call like this. These are we have these V series phones that we use that and you just go down and from one station to the next, and you just know the next station's there. And so their ear changes. And then what we got good at at first we had little cue cards that would tell you, you're talking to Cindy in Des Moines, at this station, and we would swap it out underneath. But then we got good at putting a monitor underneath it. So we got a little monitor underneath it, just swaps out to tell you that way that person goes, hey, Cindy, how's it going? That's because it's a little thing sitting underneath them. So anyway, so these satellite media tours are, they happen all day, every day. Like that's how local news gets bigger names. And it's a great way to promote your product, your service, yourself, is to be part of these things. The ones that get complicated are political satellite media tours, because you have these what we call surrogates, and the surrogates they can be a political powerhouse, but oftentimes they're like, let's say at a national convention, they might be the representatives, the senators, the different the governors, so on and so forth, and they are speaking, to push the ideas forward. But it not only does the SMT change, but we'll get them for like half an hour or an hour, and then we have to swap to another person, then we have to swap to another person, then we have to swap to another person, and that's when we started realizing that moving the chairs and the monitors and everything else, because everyone, like, one person's 5'2" and the next person's 6'3", and like, how do you, and the first time we did it, it was very uncomfortable. Like, you were like, and no one looked quite right. And then we got really good at it, where you have all these things moving. And what happens is that person sits down, and if you're, in some of them, when you have the budget, you can motorize everything, but you can also set it to the person, that our producer in the back, and eventually you could make it like a companion thing. But the person in the back has these little buttons that just push up and down, and everything just kind of goes. And so the person, like, we see the next person coming in, and you have an idea, like, oh, that person's 6'3", take it to this position. And so we didn't get to the point. We haven't done it enough where we had like pre-programmed, like, this is Nancy Pelosi, push the Nancy Pelosi button. We don't have that done. But anyway, the point is that that you have to adjust all those things to make it just right. Anyway, that's why we've thought about this a lot, is because we've done a lot of these things where you have to do it, and when you have to do it under pressure is when you start getting really tweaky about, like, all the little components that are there, because everything matters, in that process.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I feel you, Alex, with all of that stuff. Our group has done more of the entertainment style SMTs, which are now ZMTs, and the issue.
What is a ZMT? What does ZMT mean?
Zoom media.
Oh, Zoom, right. Yeah. So how does it? Tell us how a ZMT works in entertainment.
Generally, talent will come in from their home rigs or wherever, where they don't necessarily come on prem anymore. Right, and then we'll set up So this is like an actor or a director or someone that's going to talk to entertainment, probably not Entertainment Tonight, but to morning, sometimes ET, and a lot of times just a local entertainment style, whatever trending person on a local station. We'll usually use just a general webinar format, so that way talent or the queue of talent can just be in the waiting room, and we bring them in as needed. The downside with that is that they have program feedback out, so they can see and hear what other people are asking and get the scoop kind of early. So we're trying to.
Well, why do you not use? I guess the question here is, why do you not use meetings for that instead of webinar? Because here's how we do it with that, in that format, in the Zoom. So we've done these for musicians, and so one of the things that we've done with a musician is you have someone who's got it's typically a new musician. They've got 2 or 3 songs that they're pushing, and our version of that is that we have we'll have the main room that's there, so everyone comes into the Zoom main room, and then what we do is the musician's over here in their own Zoom, right? And we've got that all set up. We've got all the, their audio. We usually have them in a studio. We've got everything going into a mixer. It's going to sound good. It's going to look great. Everything's there. And then what we do is we have these other rooms, and these other rooms are the different music, folks, right? That are there. And so now what we do is this person sits over here, but what we end up doing is, so this might be like Apple Music, and then Pandora, and then Spotify, and then, so these are all different music organizations that are, that you're trying to get them to do it. Now, this person is sitting here, but what we do is we have them all set up and then we pull them into each room. So there's like 3 or 4 people here. And then what we do is we take this person and we just, we pull them into here and he goes, hey, how's it going? And, they just appear, and they go, hi, how's it going? And they see them. And then they do their little 20-minute thing where they answer some questions, they play some songs, and then we just simply go move them to the next one, and when they're in between those, so they might finish at 7:20, but their next hit is at 7:30. Then what we'll do is we'll bring them back to their green room. So they go back to a green room, they sit there for a minute, we check anything, they get some water, they do whatever they're going to do, and then we bring them back in. So there's like 4 or 5 rooms, sometimes 7 or 8 rooms that we have here, and that way no one sees anything until they just appear, for that person, for the next hit. And they don't have to, but they also, we have a safe place for them to go. And no one ever, the big thing for us is no one ever interacts with each other because these are all competitors that are all there. So we don't want to have them actually see each other. I don't know. That's how we've done that.
In that model, is it breakout rooms that you're using?
It's all breakout rooms.
And you're locking people. So that, what you just described, we see as more of a junket than a satellite media tour. And we'll do junkets coming up with some events that are coming up. And we suggested it, but
yeah, we would, and this is more of a junket. I mean, that's a junket, and the thing is that, and for those junkets, a lot of times, like we might have more than one person. There might be 3 or 4 different artists that are doing it, and so they come in. The main thing is get them out of the main room because then we don't have to ask for permission to move them. So you get them out of the main room is like the big lobby. So they come into the lobby, get them out of there into the breakout rooms, and then you can move them from one breakout room, more effectively. Okay. And then what we do is they come in and we say, hey, how's it going? And there's like a place that they can gather, and then we move them into usually into hair and makeup, which is for us is checking their mics and their da-da-da-da. And then there's the green room where they all kind of hang out, and then there's their own rooms that we move them into. And the key is a good name. So we had to, no one understood what I was doing, but I said, I was in a conversation with a client. I said, it's like the Emerald City, da, 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 da. And they go from station to station to station. And it became very quickly with a bunch of our clients, it became the Emerald City Protocol. Like the Emerald City, and someone said, and the reason it got called that is because someone said, oh, you're using the ECP. And I was like, the ECP? I didn't even know what that was. And he's like, the Emerald City Protocol. And I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, but I think that you could do that though by putting different stations into those breakout rooms. You could get them to a point where it is. You're right though that it's much more of a junket style. It is a junket. I mean, that's what I don't do the satellite media tours that way. I do the junkets that way. But I think that because with the satellite media tour, the issue is that most of our other folks want to see the footage from the previous one. They want to see it, and partially because they want to get better at asking their questions. But the other side of that is that it's confirmation of audio and video and everything else.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. I think we adopted the webinar platform, if only out of necessity, at the beginning of the pandemic, and it hasn't changed much like some other traditional broadcast things. We
were doing all webinar, and it was all we did. And what happened was that I had a conversation with Grant. So Grant was talking about how he managed people, talent, and people in meetings, and it literally in one conversation it revolutionized how we took on managing people, and now we have to have all these breakout rooms. So I can't there's just that we've gotten a little out of control. So
next question.
Next question is from Kyle Nesta in Plymouth Meeting. For a production utility machine, what upgrade do you prioritize? Purchasing 2 14-inch MacBook Pros, playback via MIDI, and Ultra Studio monitor, deck out for Keynote/PowerPoint. Budget, I have to pick 1 processor, 2 RAM, 3 SSD storage.
David?
If I had just to choose one of those, that's the pecking order I would have. Go for processor first over RAM. If you're just using it for playback and not doing any sort of rendering, you'll be better off, in my opinion, with the hottest processor. RAM is, volatile, and you're not really going to need that. Storage, you can always do it external. One point that I will make with the latest version of MIDI, it has the ability to take an app window in as a queue. So for some of the events I've done, I'll use MIDI for playback of video. With Keynote, you can play it in a window, use that as a source, bring it into MIDI. So you just stomp through the playlist and you'll have your Keynote into MIDI as a cue item without capturing it back in or doing other things of the same nature.
Alex?
So David, so you can have like play out and then you just jump to a Keynote and then they're doing their presentation.
Yep.
But that means that you could play a video, go to the Keynote, go through 2 or 3 slides, go to another play out, come back to the Keynote, go through 2 or 3 more slides.
Yep. It also, MIDI, the new version of MIDI also has a web queue. So you can have a page as a queue into MIDI. So it's just in the playlist with interaction. So if you have to go into the web page in MIDI, there's a little loopy icon thing. You go in there, you click whatever you need to. It's a beautiful thing. I love it.
And can you do that you can do that with Keynote, but can you do it with any app?
Yes. The nice thing with Keynote is you can play it out to a window, and it's, I've had a MIDI rig at work that's just in a loop, and it goes through a couple of video clips, a website, a Keynote thing that's just in a loop in itself, and it just keeps going through it, iterating over.
No, the issue that we have oftentimes when we're doing presentations is why I have an ATEM Mini is, and I have 6 Mac Minis here, and I'm switching between them. So when I do a presentation, I have my Keynote on one of them, and I'm switching through it. Sometimes it's keyed over me, sometimes it's not. If I want to show you something, if I want to show you an app, I hit a button and I go out to that app, and then I come back. And then if I want to show you a web page, I go out. If I want to play something, I go out. And so I have all those things are outside of that system. It seems like MIDI's figured out how to put that in.
Yeah, MIDI. Tomas is developing and takes cues from people. He's got 10-10-10 or 10-bit color space. It's really progressed a lot. Yeah,
so he added the 10-bit because that's been a big problem. We've been using. The only one that did that on the Mac was Softron for quite some time.
And now you don't. But if you have the different inputs queued in MIDI, now you don't have to think about what input am I hitting as I'm going about my presentation. I mean, that could take a lot of cognitive load out of your setup.
Yeah, and with OSC and companion integration, I built some crazy Stream Deck things for busking. So it'll list every cue. It dynamically renames the buttons on the fly. It'll auto find things if things move in the file system. It's really pretty cool. And you get a 20-minute free trial if you don't want to spend a couple $100 out of the gate.
I just watched all of the gears in Alex's head turn.
Yeah,
it's like I can reconfigure all the stack of Mac Minis.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about 2 weekends. Just got lost.
It's not gonna. It'll take months for me to think about. I'll think about it for the next 2 or 3 months, and then I'll
lab it one day.
It's like Oliver who's on the panel. Like it took him years to get me to do it, and then I was like, it's very much of a green egg and ham kind of thing. I was like, I will not eat them on a train. I will not. And then after that, I was like, I will eat them on a train, and I will eat them on a day. And I will. So it takes me a long time to get around to things.
Not to get outside of the question, but one more thing with MIDI too, it'll do NDI and siphon outputs. So you could use MIDI, siphon it into Mimo, go in that way and really build a nutty shop. But back to his question, processor first, RAM, and then SSD.
Yeah. To go back to it, the processor first. I would say if you're going to do production, I buy a lot of Mac Minis with 8 gigs of RAM, but I don't usually recommend those to other people. So most of my Mac Minis are 8 gigs of RAM because I don't need them to think about anything. I just need them to move things around. So, and I like to buy really cheap ones so that I have lots of them rather than one big one that I only have one of. And so you have to decide what you want to do. The only thing about SSDs, and I think for a 14-inch MacBook Pro, I think you're fine. My biggest regret with my Mac Studio is that I didn't max it out. Like I didn't just put all the 8 terabytes in because it runs at like 5 gig a second or whatever. It's so much faster than all my external drives can even attach to. There's Iodine is the only one that I'd be able to use that would get to 5 gigs transfer, and it's using all of the Thunderbolts. It loops through. You have to loop through the Iodine, but it'll use all the Thunderbolts and then run it, and it'll give me 5 gigs of transfer. But that's the only one that you can do to do that. And so anyway, so I think that storage, it's not bad if you're going to do anything other than this. If you're going to do editing or other things like that, think about having more storage.
All right, next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle asks, what was explored in the mimolab yesterday? Any breakthroughs?
Oliver?
Well, we had a lot of fun exploring new features in mimolive that allow you to control a Zoom meeting. And we do have this Zoom meeting running with 8 bots that are fed from 8 instances of mimolive on a Mac Studio and Guy Cochran's cloud. And so I showed this document that I created here that you can go to the Discord channel and download, and it works with the latest version of mimolive, where you can also download a copy. It's automated, capturing of a Zoom meeting. We do have 2 things in here that are quite interesting. An automation that says join Zoom meeting, and it has all the commands needed to actually join a specific meeting as a specific user with a specific name. And it also automatically requests recording permissions so that the meeting starts right away. And if I click that, you can see takes about a couple of seconds to log in. And then 10 seconds later, we'll just request the recording permissions. And now I have all the Zoom sources in mimolive without having to do anything in my manually. And also we have another automation here, the lower third automation every time. So this meeting has an auto switcher that switches according to the audio level. So it's listening to the 8 feeds that come in and switch to the one who's talking. That's probably not such a giant innovation, but one thing we do is we also, every time the speaker changes, we automatically update the lower third with the information on speaker of the speaker name. And every time the speaker changes, it will just pop in the lower third. And there's a lot of new features that allow you to control, like muting, unmuting, if you can share a chat and so on and so forth in the latest mimolive release. So that was a lot of fun to play around with, and I think that's it.
David?
Oliver, there's a question I had from yesterday that I forgot. But if I take that document, not join the Cochrane cloud for the bots, can I use it in a demo for the crew that I work with and just configure the usernames that it's looking for?
So if you have a meeting that has 8 bots, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, you can take that document and just join that meeting and reconfigure the sources, and then it will work with your meeting as well.
Cool. I don't refer to my colleagues as bots; they're human beings.
Oh, yeah, okay. So if they're living people, even better. So yeah, it's more dynamic that way.
Alex?
There's a whole lot there. Anyway, so the one question I have is, when you're switching via audio, are you able to control? Is there much control over how it switches? So attack time, decay, thresholds for how long it will stay in that edit. Do you have those? Do you have that control?
You have basically 3 things you can control. The threshold is how much audio volume you need before you recognize that something is actually switching. It's one threshold for all the sources right now, so that's probably something. The trigger delay, that helps you to determine how fast you want to move from one speaker to another.
We would normally call that attack.
Yeah,
trigger delay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a hold. That means that's the minimum time you stay on one speaker. So these 3 things you can control globally for all the sources in the switcher, and the switcher has up to nine sources that you can control.
right? One thing that we found, we built some software for Hangouts a long time ago that did something that's similar to that. And there's a couple things that we added to that would be really interesting to see if possible. It literally transformed how we did shows, which was, number one is we were able to do the attack and holds individually for every person. What we found was that different people needed different thresholds and different attack speeds. Some people would have these weird things that they would say, while they're listening to people, and you don't want to go to it. So we would increase their attack time. So it wasn't one size fits all, but it was different for every person, and the threshold was different for every person. The other thing that we did was what we call soft clicking, and so what we did is we would say only these 3 people can only respond to these 3 people, or only respond to these 4 people, and so instead of what we found is that the machine was too tweaky and it would jump between people too quickly, but it was much faster at editing than the human. And so what we did is if the human could implicitly control what we wanted, the machine was able to go much faster, and it would actually create more energy in the show than a person clicking the buttons. And so what it did is the editor, essentially me oftentimes, would be sitting back and going, I only want you to play with these 4 people. I only want you to do these 3 people. I only want you to do this, and it would just keep on cutting between them all. And I would just slowly move them through. For the TD, it was very relaxing because you're not cutting, you're sitting there just managing the groups of people that need to talk to each other, and ignoring people that you don't want to. And it would not only mute their audio, their video, but their audio. So they're just out of the meeting. Anyway, it's just something to think about as far as that product, because that starts to really take it to another level.
Next question. Sorry, Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for all those suggestions. I'm sure we will.
We'll keep talking.
We will take that seriously into consideration. Yeah.
Let's try that again. Next question.
Next question is from Oliver Breidenbach, and here in the panel, finally, there is an official way to hide the orange dot on external displays on the Mac when using a camera. In case it hasn't been discussed yet, and there's looks like a Apple support article.
We've been talking about it all week.
It's breaking news. This is so exciting. Go ahead, Oliver.
Yeah, is it that you know the solution, or is it that I still have a chance to
go ahead, show it?
Show you something
you can't show it more. We've shown it a couple times this week, but it's worth showing again.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, what you do is you go into the recovery mode. You have to issue a command, terminal command here, and then what shows up in the system settings. I just need to go there. System settings, privacy and security, cameras. I had prepared all of this, but it's a little new section in here, and you can just turn it off, and that's it.
So exciting. And just one more time as a reminder, you got to get into recovery mode. It's not something that you can just do in the regular terminal, but we're all very excited. Next question.
Next question is from Guy Cochran in Seattle. What are some things that you use for NDI? What are some things that you use NDI for? What is the benefit versus other options?
Oliver?
Yeah, I'm using NDI for everything, and the benefits have been discussed all the time. I think it's any video signal anywhere whenever you need it, just one cable to the camera with power control if it's a PTZ cam, and the video signal and the audio signal just to one cable. Setup time, if you go into an event or in a venue and you have to set up a couple of cameras, just running one cable to each camera, or even what we did in a recent production where we had a switch under the stage, and then we ran just one cable from the stage back to the AV booth and connected 3 or 4 cameras to that switch under the stage, and that really simplifies setup and reduces setup time. And I mean, if you need video from one computer to another, it's also very fast and easy to set up. So these are the general things that are cool about NDI. So I use it for everything, and I think it's definitely the future. Yeah.
Jeff?
Most of ours is we use it for everything too, but most of it is because it is what exists when we're doing cloud production. That's the solution for bringing audio and video between machines or up and down into the cloud. That is eventually going to end up in NDI. Even the NHL that did their big cloud. Oh, look at us, we're doing cloud stuff. That was actually converted to NDI as soon as it hit the cloud, because that's what all the tools in the cloud use. But we're using it on-prem and have been using it on-prem also for a decade now. It seems like as long as it's been around, we've used it on-prem for monitoring purposes, and we've also used it for acquisition purposes too. Every one of our cameras has the NDI capability, whether it's coming back even over the ones that are over SMPTE are getting converted to NDI pretty much right off the bat to be more flexible in our production trucks and also in our production venues whenever we're doing studios. Right now, I'm having a very slow conversion of a studio in Charleston that is a good friend of the show's, and slowly but surely he's seeing the light, and everything's going to end up NDI there before too long. I can see it already.
David?
And in a little more pedestrian application, at my Sunday place 2 years ago when we first started streaming, recommended the Mevo camera, the little oval-shaped ones, because it does NDI and it streams from the device itself. Fast forward, we've upgraded. Now we've got a PTZ optics at the back, but I use that NDI camera via a Magewell converter to get it back to HDMI. So that's my lock-off camera in the space. And then throughout the building on that Sunday place, I've got a bunch of Apple TVs with the Sienna NDI monitor. So I'm able to kind of like in-room produce everything and get it all back out there. It's pretty good stuff.
They begin to see the light. Next question.
Next question is from the QR code. Carlo Prina in London asks, it's been a few months. What opportunities in the immediate future do you see with the Vision Pro, and what are your current views on its future?
Oliver?
Well, I'm conflicted. I'm going to the Worldwide Developers Conference next month, and I'm hoping to be able to use one for the first time. So I have no first-hand experience, but I think it's going to be great. And you saw that in the last keynote for Apple, where the keynote where they introduced the iPad. They spoke a little bit about the Apple Vision Pro before they went to the main attraction. And one thing that you notice there is that they pulled very specific use cases and showed those. So they were showing, this director is using Apple Vision Pro for this, and they even had a name, and this doctor is using Apple Vision Pro for doing exactly this. And then they went to the iPad stuff, and it was more like a more general, nobody uses it. You had sort of the feeling that maybe nobody uses iPad for anything, so they don't have any specific use cases. But I mean, you see that with the Apple Vision Pro, they're focusing on if they have to focus on single use cases, that means that there's no something that's obvious and that can be abstracted. And so I think Apple has a terrible reputation for sticking with products that are very good for niche things, like the Newton or other things that weren't quite ready for the time. And I think the Apple Vision Pro is sort of like they need to be ready to let it just work for some people and then not give up on it and still spend the money and investment. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen, given Apple's record. For mimolive production is great. The the use case alone that I can have my external displays in the Apple Vision Pro visual space and use the remote control surface inside the Apple Vision Pro. I need to test if that is really viable, and if one of you who has one of those things wants to try it, I would be interested to learn what you think. But yeah, for live video production, if I don't have to carry, my idea is that I want to get rid of most equipment. So that's another thing why I'm using NDI, is like I can reduce the equipment really, really a lot. And if I don't have to carry displays to a venue and set up displays, that's even better. I've tried that with the other VR goggles that I have, that guy Cochran recommended. I forgot the name, but I tried that on one production that I did, and it worked quite well. So I'm sure that the Apple Vision Pro will work even better. So that's exciting. They are exciting use cases, but I'm not sure if it's like a mass production product or a mass product that Apple is aiming for. And I'm curious to see if they can stick around and will stick with the product for a longer time. That's sort of what I'm afraid of, is that they lose interest after about 2 or 3 years because nobody's picking up the main use case for that.
Go ahead, Alex.
We're in year 10 of a 20-year program. Like, you just need to understand that Apple's not going anywhere. Apple had a bad track record in the 90s, but they haven't. I mean, generally they've hung on to things pretty long. They spent $10 billion on a car process that never even got released. They're not. I think that we are all part of a gamma test right now, and I don't think that they need us to buy any more than we're buying right now. The key is people figuring out where the markets are, what they look like, and there's no way to figure that out until you release it and let people play with it. I'm going to be doing some tests with it over the weekend. I'm not sure if I can talk about what they are, but if you're in our group and have an Apple Vision Pro, you might want to send me a Discord soon. There's some big stuff coming. Like, when it comes to content right now, you're seeing little dips and dabs of immersive, but when you see immersive video inside of it, it's a whole new format. It's a whole new experience, and we're going to see more and more of that. And we just have to remember that you have a phone that can generate 3D content and a headset that can watch that 3D content, and that content can be seen both in VOD and live. So I think that I think we should be careful about worrying about it too early. Apple has been told that it was going to fail on the phone, it was going to fail on the watch, it was going to fail on the iPad. If we look at the news for the first couple, the first couple months or the first year of many of Apple's products, there was a lot of things that like, oh, this isn't going to work. And then it rolled over everybody. I don't like when you see someone now without it, like with the Apple Watch, the whole first year was like, why is Apple getting into this? They don't understand it. They don't understand the watch experience and everything else. And now anytime I see someone without an Apple Watch, like with something other than that, I'm like, oh, how cute. It's like, how cute. They have something other than an Apple Watch. So I think that we have to kind of look at that as well.
Yeah, and I've actually found on the Vision Pro that there was probably I went a week or two without using it, and then the other day, just because I was traveling and I was busy and doing a lot of things, and then I came back last week and put it on for 2 days when I was working from home, and I found that my ability, and I was using it mostly as a Mac external display, using the Mac virtual display, how good that screen quality was and how much it isolated me in the moment allowed me to stay focused on what I was doing. And I actually ended up getting a lot more done just by accident because I was in the zone. And then when the Mac isn't having to run the YouTube I had in the background or the podcast or what have you, and I'm putting that all around the room, it ended up being a way for me to create a work environment that I would normally need to have a desk for. And now I can recreate that whether I'm on a plane or whether I'm in a hotel room. And I actually end up having to carry less things because I'm able to do that in a virtual environment. As we're wrapping up the first hour, I want to thank everybody for being here. Also, wanted to remind everyone that we have our new panelist meeting is tomorrow. I'm sorry, our new volunteer meeting. New volunteer meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. So if you are interested in volunteering, interested in becoming part of the Office Hours community and figuring out how you can give back, how you can participate, but you're just getting started, this is going to be a really 101 nuts and bolts. How do we get started on I want to be a volunteer and I want to contribute? It's part of our every Saturday meeting cadence. And if you'd like to volunteer, we'd love to see you.